Your soulmate saying, "Please open this. Before I make the biggest mistake of my life." My beloved child. Your soulmate is whispering only one desperate sentence into the silence between your heartbeats: "Please open this, before I make the biggest mistake of my life." No one else was meant to hear those words. They were never supposed to reach you. Yet somehow, against impossible odds, they have. Imagine finding a sealed letter with your name written in trembling hands, knowing that every second you hesitate could change two lives forever. Why would someone who loves you sound so frightened? What decision are they standing on the edge of? And why does it feel as if time itself is running out? Don't skip. The truth hidden inside this message isn't about a simple confession. It's about a choice so irreversible that once it's made, there may never be another chance to rewrite the ending. Before you unfold the first page, ask yourself one question: if the person meant for your heart believed you had forgotten them, how far would they go before giving up? The first line of the letter doesn't begin with, "I love you." It begins with an apology. "I'm sorry for believing silence meant you stopped caring." Suddenly, everything you thought you understood starts to fall apart. Maybe the distance wasn't caused by a lack of love. Maybe it was built from unanswered moments, missed signs, and fears that neither of you ever spoke aloud. Your soulmate admits they waited longer than anyone knows. They searched for hope in ordinary days, convincing themselves that tomorrow would finally bring a reason to stay. But tomorrow kept arriving empty. Then comes a sentence so unexpected it steals the air from your lungs: "Someone else has asked me to walk into a future that doesn't belong to my heart." Stay till the end, because that isn't the biggest mistake they're talking about. The real mistake is still waiting, hidden beneath the next page. As your eyes move lower, the handwriting changes. It becomes shakier, as though every word was written while fighting back tears. "If you never open this," the letter says, "I'll assume destiny was trying to protect you from me." But then one final confession appears, one they almost crossed out forever. They reveal they already chose a date to leave behind everything they once believed about love. Not because they wanted someone else, but because they no longer believed you would ever find your way back. Yet tucked inside the envelope is something even stranger, a tiny note with only 3 haunting words: "I'm still waiting." Waiting where? Waiting for how long? "I wrote this months ago," your soulmate confesses, "but I was too afraid to send it." Suddenly, you realize this isn't a letter written in one painful night. It's a collection of moments, each one capturing a different battle between hope and surrender. Every page reveals another attempt to believe you would somehow return before it was too late. But one sentence refuses to let your heart rest: "I stopped asking whether you loved me. I started asking whether fate had already decided our story." That single thought changed everything. And what happened after it is something they never imagined they would be capable of. The next paragraph doesn't describe a celebration or a new beginning. It describes a quiet afternoon where they stood in front of a door they almost walked through forever. On the other side waited a life that looked safe, predictable, and free from heartbreak. Friends smiled. Family approved. Every sign pointed toward saying yes. Yet their hand wouldn't move. Something invisible kept pulling them back, whispering that one unanswered question still remained. What if you were only one step away, they wrote. What if you were searching for me while I was preparing to disappear from your future? Those questions became impossible to silence. They smiled for everyone else, but inside, every heartbeat felt like it was begging for one last reason to wait. Don't look away now, because the next confession changes the meaning of everything you've heard so far. Then you reach the shortest page in the entire letter, but somehow it carries the greatest weight. There are only a few lines written across the center. If this message reached you, then something extraordinary happened. It means hope survived longer than fear. Beneath that, your soulmate reveals they left behind one final clue instead of a goodbye. A place connected to a memory only the two of you would understand if your hearts were truly meant to find each other again. They never explain the location. They only leave one haunting promise: if you remember, you'll know exactly where to look. Suddenly the letter is no longer asking you to feel sorry for them. It's inviting you to solve a mystery before the biggest mistake becomes permanent. And hidden behind the last folded page is a revelation that neither of you is prepared to face. The final fold opens with something you never expected to see: a date. Not a birthday. Not an anniversary. Just an ordinary day that somehow feels unforgettable. Beneath it, your soulmate writes, "This was the day I almost convinced myself to stop believing in us." Then they describe a moment so small that most people would have ignored it completely. A stranger smiled. A familiar song began to play. The wind carried a memory they couldn't explain. They took it as one last sign to wait a little longer. Just one more day. Then another. And another. If you're reading this now, they confess, it means every extra day I waited was leading to this moment. But why would someone who had nearly walked away leave behind so many chances to be found? Stay with this story, because the answer is closer than it has ever been. As you continue reading, the tone changes once again. The fear is still there, but something brighter begins to break through it. I realized the biggest mistake of my life wasn't choosing another path, they write. It was believing your silence told me the whole truth. Suddenly, every unanswered message, every missed opportunity, every moment of doubt begins to look different. They admit they imagined hundreds of endings, yet none of them included the possibility that life itself had simply kept you apart. Then comes a sentence that feels almost impossible to forget: love didn't disappear. We just stopped hearing each other. Those words echo long after you've read them, because deep inside, you begin wondering how many beautiful stories end not from a lack of love, but from a lack of one honest conversation. Then, tucked into the very back of the envelope, you discover one final handwritten note, smaller than all the others. It isn't asking for forgiveness. It isn't asking for promises. It asks only one question: if destiny gives us one more chance, will you recognize me before fear does? There is no signature beneath it, only the outline of a small heart, drawn with an unsteady hand, as though they were smiling through tears. You realize the letter was never meant to trap you in the past. It was meant to wake you before two lives drifted apart forever. Yet as you turn the note over, 3 unexpected words are waiting on the other side. Words that reveal your soulmate has been hiding one final secret this entire time. Something huge is waiting for you. You slowly turn the note over, expecting another farewell. Instead, you find 3 simple words written with remarkable care: I saw you. For a moment, nothing makes sense. Saw you, when? Where? Your heart races as the next lines explain that your soulmate believes your paths crossed long after you were separated. They remember seeing someone whose eyes felt painfully familiar, someone they almost called out to before fear convinced them they were mistaken. They watched you disappear into the crowd, carrying the unbearable feeling that destiny had placed you within reach only to let you slip away again. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, they write. If I had taken one more step, would our story already have a different ending? Suddenly, the mystery isn't about whether love still exists. It's about how close the two of you have been without ever realizing it. The letter grows even more personal. Every sentence feels like a memory wrapped inside a confession. Your soulmate admits they stopped searching in obvious places because they realized real connections rarely arrive when people force them. Instead, they began leaving quiet pieces of hope behind. Visiting meaningful places, returning to old memories, holding on to the belief that if 2 hearts truly belonged together, life would eventually create another meeting. But there was a deadline they never told anyone about. If nothing changed before that day, they whisper through the page, I promised myself I would stop looking back. That promise is approaching faster than either of you imagined. Don't look away now, because the final page doesn't reveal where they are. It reveals why they've never been able to let go. As you reach the bottom of the letter, one final revelation changes everything you thought this story was about. The biggest mistake of my life, your soulmate writes, was never loving you. It was believing I had to bury that love just to keep moving. Those words linger long after the page ends. They don't ask you to chase them. They don't demand an answer. They simply leave one quiet promise. If our paths cross again, I won't let fear speak before my heart. Then the ink stops, except for a tiny arrow pointing toward the inside of the envelope itself. Hidden beneath the paper is something you hadn't noticed before, a single photograph with one detail that shouldn't be possible, a detail proving this story has one last secret waiting to be uncovered. Stay till the end, because what that photograph reveals could change everything. Your fingers hesitate before lifting the photograph from the envelope. At first glance, it looks ordinary, a quiet street, soft evening light, people passing without a second thought. But then your eyes catch the impossible detail. In the background stands someone looking directly toward the camera. It's you. Not posing. Not smiling. Completely unaware the picture was ever taken. The date printed beneath the image matches the day your soulmate believed they had almost recognized you. Suddenly, the memory becomes real. You weren't separated by oceans or years in that moment. You were only a few steps apart. I kept this picture, the note explains, because I needed proof that fate hadn't imagined you. The realization settles heavily inside your heart. You weren't just part of their memories. You had unknowingly become part of their hope. And the next sentence makes the silence even harder to bear. You walked away before I found the courage to say your name. The final pages reveal something your soulmate never admitted to anyone else. They weren't afraid of rejection. They were afraid of arriving too late. Every time life placed you within reach, doubt whispered that interrupting your journey might only bring you pain. So they chose silence, believing it was the kinder choice. But silence has a cruel way of pretending to be wisdom while quietly stealing opportunities that never return. I thought protecting your peace meant sacrificing my own, they confess. Only now do I understand that unanswered love creates questions that echo for years. Stay till the end, because you're about to discover why they called this the biggest mistake of their life. It wasn't one decision. It was every moment they allowed fear to speak louder than truth. Then, hidden behind the photograph, you find one last handwritten sentence, so faint it almost disappears into the paper. If you're reading this today, then the ending hasn't been written yet. There is no address. No phone number. No instructions telling you what to do next. Only an invitation to believe that some stories refuse to end simply because the world believes they should. Yet before the envelope closes forever, a final clue appears in the corner, a familiar symbol that points to a place only one shared memory could unlock. Your soulmate left it there for one reason alone. They believed that if your hearts were ever meant to meet again, you would recognize that symbol instantly. But what waits at that place isn't another letter, it's the answer they were too afraid to write down. The symbol refuses to leave your mind. It isn't elaborate or mysterious to anyone else, but to you it unlocks a memory that has been sleeping for far too long. You remember a quiet place where two strangers shared a conversation that somehow felt unfinished, where time slowed down just enough for two hearts to notice each other before life pulled them in different directions. Your soulmate writes, "If you recognize this mark, then you've already remembered more than you realize." Every step toward that place now feels heavier than the last, because you aren't just chasing a memory. You are chasing the answer to a question that has followed both of you for years. What if the greatest love story isn't the one that begins perfectly, but the one that survives every reason to end? Don't skip. The next discovery isn't waiting inside another envelope. It's waiting where the silence first began. When you finally arrive, nothing looks extraordinary. The same path. The same quiet atmosphere. The same gentle breeze moving through the trees. For one heartbreaking moment, it feels as though you came too late. Then your eyes catch something tucked beneath a familiar bench. It isn't another letter. It's a small notebook, carefully wrapped to protect it from time. Inside are dozens of entries, each written on different dates. Some pages are hopeful. Others are filled with doubt. But every single one carries the same name, you. Your soulmate never stopped writing, even when they believed no one would ever read these words. One passage leaves you completely still. If destiny gives us another meeting, I won't ask where you've been. I'll simply be grateful that you came. Suddenly, the fear that filled the earlier letters begins to transform into something neither of you expected. Hope. As you turn to the final page of the notebook, the handwriting becomes calm, almost peaceful. If you're here, it says, then the biggest mistake of my life has already been undone. Not because everything is perfect, but because the truth finally found you. Beneath those words rests one last folded note, sealed but never opened. Across the front, only a single sentence is written: read this only when you're ready to discover why our story was never about goodbye. Your hand reaches for the seal, but before you can break it, you notice something impossible. The note isn't addressed to you alone. There is another name written beside yours. A name that changes everything you thought you knew about this journey and reveals that someone else has been protecting this secret from the very beginning. For a long moment, you simply stare at the second name. It isn't the name of a rival. It isn't someone who tried to keep you apart. It's the name of the one person who quietly witnessed your story from the beginning without either of you realizing it. According to the note, this person had been carrying the final message for years, waiting for the exact moment when both hearts were ready to hear the truth instead of running from it. Love can survive distance, the message begins, but it cannot survive endless misunderstanding. Suddenly, every missed chance, every painful silence, every moment that felt like bad luck starts fitting together like pieces of a puzzle that was never broken, only incomplete. You realize your soulmate never wanted you to carry guilt. They wanted you to understand that fear had been the only thing standing between two people who never truly stopped choosing each other. With trembling hands, you unfold the last page. There are no dramatic confessions left. No impossible promises. Only quiet honesty. If you've reached this moment, your soulmate writes, don't spend another day wondering what could have been. Life has already stolen enough time from us. The words are simple, yet they carry more weight than every page before them. They explain that the biggest mistake was never falling in love, never waiting too long, and never believing in destiny. The biggest mistake was allowing fear to speak louder than the heart for far too many years. If we meet again, the letter continues, let our first words be the truth we should have spoken long ago. In that instant, the mystery that began with a desperate plea finally reveals its purpose. The letter wasn't asking you to rescue your soulmate. It was asking both of you to stop letting silence decide your future. As you place the final page back into the envelope, something inside you feels different. Not because every question has been answered, but because the most important one no longer needs an answer. Real love isn't measured by perfect timing. It's measured by the courage to choose honesty when another moment of silence feels easier. The envelope closes, but this story doesn't. Somewhere beyond this final page, two paths are no longer moving away from each other. They are slowly finding the same direction again. And perhaps the greatest miracle was never hidden inside the letters at all. It was the simple decision to open them before the biggest mistake became permanent. The story could have ended with the envelope closing forever. But days later, as you carefully place every letter back inside, one tiny piece of paper slips onto the floor. It had been hidden between two pages all along, folded so tightly that it escaped notice. There is no greeting, no signature, only one breathtaking sentence. If you're reading this, then you chose hope instead of regret. Your heartbeat quickens. You were certain there were no more secrets left. Yet this forgotten note feels different from everything that came before. It doesn't speak about the past. It speaks about tomorrow. Don't spend your life searching for the exact moment we lost each other, it says. Search for the moment we finally stopped being afraid. For the first time, you realize the letters were never meant to keep you looking backward. They were preparing you for the one choice that still remained. As you continue reading, your soulmate reveals something they had protected until the very end. I kept imagining our reunion, they confess. Not because I believed destiny owed us another chance, but because I wanted to become someone brave enough to deserve it. Those words settled deep inside you. Throughout every page, they had spoken about fear, silence, and missed opportunities. But now they speak about growth. They describe learning that love cannot flourish where assumptions replace conversations. Every unanswered question had taught them to value honesty more than certainty. Every lonely night had taught them that waiting means nothing unless the heart is also willing to act when the moment finally arrives. Stay with this story, because one final realization is about to change everything you thought these letters were trying to say. The last lines are almost impossibly simple. If our paths never cross again, your soulmate writes, then let this letter remind you to never.